This is Franchise Today, brought to you by FRM Solutions, providers of the best-in-class software solutions for franchise relationship management. Franchise Today is your destination for weekly information, conversations, and interviews with accomplished industry leaders, all of whom share best practices for sustainable growth and sensible franchising. Here now, your host, Stan Friedman, to kick off this week's podcast.
Today is Wednesday, May 14th, 2025. I'm Stan Friedman, and this is Franchise Today. Well, here's hoping that those of you who attended the World Franchise Show in Miami last weekend had a great and fruitful show. From what I saw online, I know that my friends at Wisdom Senior Care did. It's not every day that you get Damon John of Shark Tank fame stopping by your booth and spontaneously recording a live commercial for you right there in the booth. Way to go, Carolyn and Charles Thurston. I hope, too, that those of you who had to make a beeline to the airport caught a break and made it home safely in time for Mother's Day with your loved ones and family. With all the hustle bustle last week, some of you may have missed my interview with Greg Muzzillo, founder of Proforma. If you haven't streamed or downloaded that one yet, don't miss it. Greg shares the storied adventures of his journey, which began in 1978 when he and a partner funded the birth of Proforma with nothing more than $100 a piece. Today, nearly half a century later, Greg's original partner is long gone, but he and his wife, Vera, are instead surrounded by an amazing family of more than 600 franchisees and affiliates, hundreds more support team members, suppliers, customers, and clients. What started as a $200 investment back then has morphed into more than a $600 million enterprise and world-class franchise brand. It's a great story when anyone tells it, but it's better still when told by Greg, he himself, a great and engaging storyteller. Thanks again, Greg, for sharing it with us here last week, my friend. Shifting gears, today's conversation promises to treat you yet again to another fascinating story, this one about a paradigm shift that's occurring in the training domain. I'm talking about a guy named Sam Caiucci and the explosive growth of HUDDLE, an AI-driven training methodology that Sam conceived some 10 or so years ago. HUDDLE employs gamification for onboarding new franchisees, frontline employees, back-of-the-house personnel, management, and can even take franchise development up a notch, helping candidates have fun learning about your brand's offerings while providing franchise development teams with insights to better evaluate candidates by the data created from their behavior playing HUDDLE games as they move through the funnel. With HUDDLE, the secret sauce is the data and reporting generated by those being trained through gamification. When I return in 2 minutes or less, I'll introduce you to Sam Caiucci, founder and CEO of HUDDLE, to tell you all about it.
Franchise Today will be right back, but first, a word from our sponsors.
Franchise Today is brought to you by Profit Keeper, the #1 franchise analytics platform for franchisors and franchisees. Trusted by more than 150 brands and 50,000 franchisees, Profit Keeper connects KPI, benchmark, and royalty data from your locations, groups, and territories. With Profit Keeper, you see stats in real time, presented simply and graphically. This makes it easy to identify actionable information for franchisees to help them drive profitability and brand growth at the unit level. No more wrangling data and guessing what works and what doesn't. To learn more and to get started, visit profitkeeper.com/franchise today. Well, in my show opener, I gave Wisdom Senior Care a shout out for getting Damon John to sing their praises at the World Franchise Show in Miami. What could be better than that? Well, how about getting Shark Tank's Mr. Wonderful, Kevin O'Leary, to do something similar, but on CNBC? As part of the panel that would feature Sam and HUDDLE, the host panel actually played a HUDDLE game that Sam's team created with information about the show and its hosts. After experiencing HUDDLE, Mr. Wonderful said this was actually fun and referred to the training as training that doesn't suck. Well, how awesome is that? Here to tell us all about HUDDLE and how it works, founder and CEO Sam Caiucci. Sam Caiucci, welcome to Franchise Today.
Thanks for having me, Stan.
Appreciate you being here, Sam. I'm learning more and more about One Huddle by somebody I'm working with that's got me over their shoulder, helping them evaluate things in the space that you're doing business in. Man, you've got me excited by this brand, Sam.
Thanks. Yeah, I mean, I think it's an exciting time right now, especially, when I started the company, Stan, it was really just coming from a place of there's got to be a better way to train employees for work. And with that, it's obviously the world has changed pretty dramatically over the last bunch of years, kind of leading into COVID, post-COVID. And, I feel like here at One Huddle especially, we're having a lot of fun by injecting more fun into work.
Amen. Well, we're going to do something a little different than usual because each week my guests are usually from the C-suites of franchise firms that have already demonstrably put the word sustainable in front of growth or sensible in front of franchising. And they come here to share and drop nuggets for an audience of those that are still aspiring to perhaps hit some of those high water marks. The only time I don't have one of those types of guests is when I have one like you, because you're not one of those people who's doing that, but you are one of those people supporting people who are doing that. And I'm going to ask you to open with just a little bit about what One Huddle is, what it does in short form, and give us an elevator talk. And then we're going to go back in time to how you and franchising found each other with this amazing product. So start with a little elevator talk about One Huddle.
Sure. I think today when you look at any business, but especially in franchising, everything comes down to your people, period, is what we say at One Huddle. And when it comes to people today, most workers are challenged on a variety of fronts. They may not feel connected. They may not feel engaged. They may not feel capable. And because of that, organizations and franchise brands aren't able to grow at the speed that they wish to. So with One Huddle, we learn that all of those things, connection, engagement, capability, all comes down to how you onboard, upskill, and fire up your people. And in a world where there's so many technologies that we use, we felt like there was one missing. And One Huddle helps organizations to onboard, train up, continuously develop their people. And we do it using something they're already great at. We do it using games. And when you look at the data today around workers, 55% are Gen Z millennial. When you double click on that group, that audience has spent over 10,000 hours on a game platform before 21. So for all the folks out there that understand the value of 10,000 hours at something builds a skill. When I started the company, we said, how do we tap into something this generation's already good at? Well, at the same time, using a platform that's engaging and effective. So today, One Huddle works with brands across a dozen verticals, from franchise brands like Hand and Stone to Doghouse to Wetzel's Pretzels, and then to non-franchise brands like Madison Square Garden, Lowe's Hotels, and even the U.S. Air Force. I think our charge is simple. How do we create a world where every employee can reach their true potential?
So where do you reach back to qualify for creating a company such as this? What's your background, Sam?
Sure. So Stan originally grew up in the South Florida area. I was a college athlete, started working right away in the sports industry. And I spent the majority of my career in environments that think like sports performance, where you're preparing an athlete for the NFL draft or Major League Baseball spring training prep. And I got to spend a lot of time around strength coaches and speed coaches that charged a lot of money to save a tenth of a second on your 40 or help an athlete jump just a little bit higher or be a little bit stronger. And I did that for a number of years. I worked in business development, so selling and then managing a sales team. That was really where I gained a lot of experience with the challenges of training. Because as everybody knows, bringing on a new team member and getting them to contribution is a challenge. Not to franchising, I moved to the Northeast and I worked corporately for Lifetime Fitness before getting introduced to a gentleman by the name of Bill Parisi, who was the founder of the Parisi Speed School. And the Parisi Speed School was at the time, call it 42 unit franchise concept, speed and agility training for kids. Target market was kids 7 to high school. And they also trained professional athletes. But I came on board with the Parisi Speed School, given my background in the sports space. And Parisi was starting their sort of next stage of growth. And I came on board to lead franchise development. So that was a brand new experience for me, managing sales inside of a franchise brand. But over the next few years, I helped Parisi march up towards the high 80s in franchise units and began to move from the franchise development seat into equal parts support, and spent a lot of time traveling the globe, expanding the brand into a few different international markets. And it really was my experience in franchising, getting the opportunity to work with all types of business owners in all types of settings. We were using the Parisi Speed School as a model. We were focused on how do we get these brands up to speed quickly and successful. But again, that experience was in many ways kind of like the playground for the creation of One Huddle.
And so what year would it have been when the whiteboard was transformed into reality?
Sure, 2015. So yeah, about 10 years ago, after several years with the Parisi Speed School and all of the challenges that we would realize around using a learning management system or an e-learning tool as the way to transfer knowledge, a light bulb kind of went off in my head. And it really revolved around how do we not just transfer knowledge more efficiently, because the business changes really rapidly, and especially in franchising, there's some core tenets we want everybody to know. And then there's very specific iterations that are very local. So it's almost like global content and local content. And the idea was how do we get this information out quickly? And then how do we empower local franchisees to customize and personalize content and continue to scale and develop their people? And like I said, I think there was probably one too many tequilas, Stan, along the way. But I think everybody who knows the moment of kind of the light bulb going off, for me, I kind of married two things that I was spending a lot of time researching. One was the science of learning. How do you actually improve skill? So for folks out there that are coaching or teaching, whether it's learning a language or coaching your kids in soccer or football, I was really engulfed in the science of learning and how do we make learning effective. And then the second side of it, I was really engulfed in the power of gaming mechanics. How do you use the concepts behind a game, points, badges, trophies, leaderboards, to inspire and motivate? And, like I said, I can't tell you the exact moment that I put the pen to the whiteboard, but we have a picture up here at the One Huddle office when I did. And it was just, at the time, we called it the sales game. That was the first version of One Huddle, was to help sales teams sell better. And we called it the sales game. And that was in 2015.
And how many clients were you at before you and franchising got together?
Well, I went right to franchising first. So knowing my friends at the Parisi Speed School, they gave me a platform to really beta test the concept. And when I was starting the journey of building One Huddle, I had no background in technology. I had no background in software. I was a sales guy and I had an idea. And the Parisi Speed School gave me the opportunity to kind of roll out a V1 to a few of their franchise locations, which we did. And in parallel, I started to sell the product into other categories just because we were trying to figure out where will this be a good fit. Our first paying client was Monumental Sports and Entertainment. They're the group behind the Washington Wizards and the Washington Capitals, the professional basketball and hockey teams. We then grew to Madison Square Garden and the New York Mets before we moved from sports into several other categories. And again, Parisi Speed School became a paying client of the platform. And since then, we've expanded into probably today, a high percentage of our logos are heavy frontline workforce environments. And like I said, we have a number of clients that are in the franchising category that use the platform every day for their workforce.
And for the teams, what are you finding there? Is that ticket sales or merch, or what is it being used for?
Sure. So for professional sports, it's ticket sales. Sponsorship sales, guest services is usually where those organizations start first. For us, what we've learned is when an employee is automatic, they do the right thing the right way, the right time, every time, then that obviously has an impact on the success of the business. So most organizations, especially sports teams, always start putting us with the revenue generating group. So for pro sports, it's ticket sales, sponsorship sales, guest services. Anybody who is customer facing, revenue impacting is where we start. And then as the product has success, then almost naturally they expand it to the full workforce, where now One Huddle is not just working with the 30 or 35 sales and guest services team members, but we're working with the 3,000 game day workers as well.
Fascinating, Sam. I'll tell you what, let's take a quick break. On the other side of that break, let's dig down deeper into the franchise applications and how many different ways, shapes, and forms there are for both franchisors, franchisees, and their teams to benefit from the power of One Huddle. I'm Stan Friedman. This is Franchise Today. Sam Caiucci is my guest today, and we're talking all about gaming in training. Don't go away. We're coming right back.
Franchise Today will be right back, but first, a word from our sponsors.
Franchise Today is brought to you by FRM Solutions, offering the only CRM tool built exclusively for franchising that lets you have it your way. Whether you're a single brand needing professional tools across departments or a portfolio of brands needing franchise-specific CRM across the enterprise. Either way, FRM satisfies the needs of many with the power of one. That's right, one single instance of FRM is all it takes across departments or across brands. So if you've had it with inflexible, one-size-fits-all CRM, end your frustration today. FRM offers robust dashboarding, tailored reporting, and with open APIs, FRM pushes, pulls, and integrates with other databases, providing you with a single source of truth. Don't just take my word for it. Visit them at frmsolutions.com and order up a demo today. And my conversation continues today with Sam Caiucci, founder and CEO of One Huddle. So tell me, Sam, do you have any franchisors that are using this internally? Are they using it in Fran Dev or inside corporate, or is it all franchisor, franchisee facing?
Sure. Yeah, there's a few different ways today that we're being used in franchising. The first is franchisors using it to onboard, to help Z's onboard new employees. So the first way would be a training solution that's supportive of the network that the franchisee can use. Whenever they make a new hire, they can use One Huddle to get new hires up to speed with the brand, up to speed with systems and processes. That's the first way right out of the gate. That's probably the most popular one for folks to start with. Second is they'll use it for ongoing communication. And as you know, franchising, things are always changing. Information, how do we get it from at the top of the ladder with the franchisor all the way down to the Z and the frontline experience? They'll use our platform to continuously communicate new changes, new services, new products, new systems. So that's the kind of second use of the platform that's supportive of the Z. And then the third way, which is, again, I think one of the best ways the platform is used, in my opinion, is it's used in the franchise development process. The challenge to qualify a potential Z in the process to make sure they're a good fit and make sure you're granting the right opportunity to the right partner. So games can be used during the franchise development process at multiple points, whether it's just early in the process to help a potential partner learn more about the brand. You probably already have those games built and on your shelf on One Huddle, so you can roll those out to folks to learn a little bit more. You can also use it during, like for a lot of brands that do discovery days, or they have folks flying out to do any in-person meeting or in-person discovery event. They'll use the games as a way to engage folks during that process. And every game is kind of like a window. You're not just training in one direction. You're also getting feedback. So the brand is learning. If it's a training setting, you're learning what people are good at, what are they weak at, where are their coaching and development opportunities. And in Fran Dev, it's kind of the same thing. You're learning who is really leaning in, how much do they really know about the franchise business model, or how much have they invested to learn more about your brand. So I talk a lot to brands about how the games are not just something you do to others. They're an opportunity for you, if you look at the data, to unlock insights to make decisions on how you're better going to engage the folks that are playing.
So why don't we spend a minute here clarifying what the game is and how it's played? Can you open the eyes of the audience to that, help them understand what that looks like?
Yeah, it's a great question, Stan. A game on One Huddle is kind of like a quick burst trivia event. So everybody understands trivia. And when we built One Huddle, we knew we wanted to build a game platform. But the question becomes like, what kind of game? There's all types of games. There's more advanced games, which are maybe more popular today, games like Fortnite and Candy Crush. And then you have like word type games like crossword puzzles, and you have games like Wordle that some folks are familiar with. But one of the things we learned is that the most popular game format globally is trivia. Still very simple. Whether you played trivia at a restaurant or at a bar, or you played with friends at home, the format of trivia is universally understood. So that game format was very important to us because we are not just targeting one age demographic on One Huddle. We have, for example, today, 40% of our players are not Gen Z or millennial. So they're boomers, they're Gen X. So it was very important that everybody can play. And we didn't want there to be a big learning curve when you play a game because folks are at work. How do we get you in and out, back to work and performing? So a game on One Huddle is a 2 to 3 minute trivia game. A game could be one question, multiple choice, true, false, short answer. There's a bunch of different trivia formats, but it could be one question. It could be 100 questions. Now, the game is locked to only a 2 to 3 minute event every time you play. So every time you play, there'll be a different mix of questions that the game fetches. And we are using AI at One Huddle to make sure that the selection of questions every time you play are based on your own individual performance. So if I open up the app, I'm playing on my iPhone or my Android or even a desktop, I would select the game of the day or the game of the week that is being curated to me. And then, like I said, the game is a 2 to 3 minute trivia experience. The goal is very simple. How do you get as many points as fast as you can? And at the end of the game, players get a recap of their performance. And if that's the only game you have to play today, then you close the app and you get back to work, as we say at One Huddle. So close it out and get back. The average player on One Huddle today, Stan, is playing about 14 minutes of gameplay per day. So you're talking about like anywhere between 4 to 5 games that may be consumed in a day. And because they're 2 to 3 minutes, they fit very cleanly into the first few minutes of a shift or the first in between time while you're at work. Because again, our focus is on people getting up to speed. This isn't just a game for entertainment. The game should be entertaining, but also elevating at the same time.
And then talk about the content creation and how the AI component helps you create the content. I would think that the franchisors listening to this would go, oh my God, who's got time to create all this? Where's it coming from?
Yeah, I mean, creation, I want to always say fast is important across the entire product. It's not just about fast for the player, 2 to 3 minutes, as I mentioned. It's also fast for the author. And as I looked around in franchising, the reality is most Zs or most multi-unit brands or the franchisor themselves, they may not have a PhD in learning design on the team that's able to constantly create content that's relevant. And honestly, the other thing that I learned this in franchising by just getting out in the field and going to the franchisee and spending time with their people and their team and their owners, is that where the gold is on the front line. The exact moment in time of the end user, the employee, and the guest interaction. That is where you really have opportunity to transform best practice into standards. So as Stan brought up, we have a creation tool where all you have to do is import a series of documents, videos, or just simple text into One Huddle. And One Huddle's game builder will auto-generate a game or a game series instantly. So our AI tool helps you to transform any communication into a game. And then you can offer that game builder to your network. So like for Hand and Stone, who's a client, Hand and Stone corporate franchisor has the ability to create network-wide games that are brand relevant. When they do new partnerships with different product lines, they may create those games and open those games up to all franchisees to engage with and play. But at the franchisee level, the general manager or the local owner, they can also open up One Huddle and build customized games for their locations and for their employees. So the product is really built for authoring to happen at 2 levels. One is corporate at the franchisor level, and the second one is very local with the franchisee. And in franchising, I think we saw 71% of all games created happen at the franchisee level, which is also kind of cool because then the franchisor has a window into what are the franchisees teaching, coaching, mentoring their people on. So that's the kind of 2 levels of the authoring tool.
And on the back end, let's talk a minute about the leaderboards and the competitive nature and how the franchisor can glean so much information about what's going on up front with the management reports and dashboards that you've created.
Again, the data piece of the product is really important. If you think about it, you have the insights around two different layers, which is really unique to One Huddle. The first is insights around skills, which we're able to tell a manager or an admin, whether that's the franchisor or the franchisee, they can see who's playing, what they're playing, when they're playing it, what they're doing well at. So that first bucket of skill data is really valuable on our platform. It's not just a training event, it's almost like a low stakes test. So if we wanted to make sure an individual knew the menu or knew the brand story, every time you play, it's not just an exercise in getting better, it's also a window into where you currently are. Think of it like running a 40-yard dash or trying to do a vertical jump test. That is an opportunity for us to gauge where we are. So the first is skills. The second bucket, though, is what makes this a very powerful combination when it comes to data. It's showing interests. And I would argue that in the future of franchising, similar to the future of work, the problem with a lot of the talent and training data is it's all about participation. Pass, fail. Did you do it? Did you not do it? And because skills don't have the same shelf life they used to, AI, automation, technology, all of the fun toys at your next IFA show that you're going to see on the floor that you're going to be adopting into your business, they're changing work. And as work changes, the skills you need change. But the second piece of interest, knowing what an end worker, what a Z, or what an individual is most interested in, helps us to better understand how we can mentor, support, and activate our network. And today on One Huddle, we have over 3,000 on-demand games that are not brand specific, which means an individual that works at Doghouse and is working in the front of house can open up One Huddle, which Doghouse offers to their team members. And it's not just they're going to play games on the menu. They can play games on leadership development, or they can play games on healthy eating or financial education, like how to open a bank account or strengthen their credit score. Or they can play from over today on One Huddle, nearly a third of all our games are on top business books from Audible, which is a partner of One Huddle. No, so I think today the data piece is not just what skills you have, but where do your people want to go? And if we understand skills and interests, those franchise brands can really unlock the true potential of their talent force.
Sam, before I ask you to share contact info so people can find you again, what have I not asked you today that you think I should have? Is there anything I've missed?
You've done a great job, Stan. Of course, you know what you're doing. But I think the maybe the piece I'll add, and it's only because of my vantage point at One Huddle, looking every day at gameplay numbers and looking at things like I just mentioned, who's playing, what they're playing it, when they're playing it, what interests them. I think one of the questions that we should be asking is who is a platform like One Huddle not for? And I think there's a lot of organizations that invest in technology and franchising, and they are attempting to make sure that their technology stack is complete. And I would argue that what got us here isn't going to get us there. And as work is changing, it's really important that brands, maybe with more frequency, pause and rethink their technology stack almost as infrastructure. Just like we have roads and bridges and tunnels, we need to have really strong infrastructure around how we find, onboard, and develop talent. And if we do that, if we build interstate highways with no potholes where you can get where you need to go quickly, then I do believe that you'll create a world where a new hire will move their way up and connect all the dots, as we talk about so much in franchising. And I'm sure as you have seen, Stan, which is that frontline worker who someday can be a manager and then can be a regional manager and then can maybe be a franchisee and then maybe be a franchisor. That story is possible. But in order for that to happen, we need to be willing to invest dollars in technology as infrastructure. And again, I think systems like One Huddle and I think the future of franchising is going to put a lot of brands to test on, are they trying to pave the swamp in many ways, trying to create growth, as you mentioned, but doing it without considering, and oftentimes, big investments in order to make sure that they have the foundation upon which to grow from.
I think to add to that, in my world, which in many ways is similar to yours, in my world of CRM with FRM, I think that companies that make investments in their technology stack and want to make it such that it's their software, what a mistake of human resource and what a waste of money. because as quickly as technology advances and changes today, it's like buying a car. Do you want to be stuck with the model year that you bought when you bought it? Or do you want to be able to trade it in like a lease? Just get the latest and greatest version and always be driving the latest and greatest vehicle. Companies that take that inside to me are an enigma. How do you waste the treasure of your organization trying to create things that are already there and available to you? And if you put your head down inside as a czar and do for your franchisees the things that are core to your core competencies, teach them how to manage and run an efficient business using your trademarks and your secret sauce, let the technology people like Sam and people like FRM and others that are in that space providing service to the franchise community continue to do what they're best at, which is keeping those latest versions available to you. And everybody then comes away a much bigger winner. What part of that might you disagree with?
I think you're on the money. I think that the days of building your own homegrown software platform there was obviously a period of time where that happened a lot. But I think that organizations, if you like, for example, at One Huddle, we have a team of game designers. All they've ever done from a software perspective is build games. And they built some of the biggest games. Some of the people on our team have worked for EA Sports, and they worked for some really popular gaming systems from PlayStation to Nintendo to Sega. We put together a team of some rock star professionals around gaming because we knew if we're going to try to do what we're doing, we want the best in the room. It just wouldn't make sense for a brand to try to engineer something from scratch in our category when there's partners. But I would agree. I think the businesses should focus. We always got to focus on where can we make the biggest impact and what is the subject matter and the IP that we're the best in the world at. And outside of that, we should surround ourselves with the partners in which to be successful. And again, I would just second that from a software perspective, the world is moving so fast and the technologies are moving so fast. Even the AI tool we just talked about, when I tell you every 2 weeks, we are releasing new updates to the AI tool that is not minor, but major. I have never seen in my decade doing this, the technology move as fast as it's moving. And I think that organizations, like I said, it comes back to it's your infrastructure, it's how you're going to get where you're going to go. You need to make sure that you're laying down the right stuff. Outside of that, as you've seen, I've seen too many brands make grave errors by over-investing in a technology that's been homegrown that isn't able to keep up with the speed at which technology is changing anymore.
Well said, my friend. Sam, how about some contact info? How do people find out more? Where do they go for a demo?
Sure, Stan. If folks want to learn a little bit more about One Huddle, we have a ton of information on our website at onehuddle.co. So www.onehuddle.co, and you can learn a bunch more about the product there, request a demo. And Stan, again, thank you for having me today.
Sam, I appreciate you coming and sharing so much with us today and helping to enlighten others in the audience. Sam Caiucci, founder and CEO of One Huddle. Thanks for being here.
Thanks, Stan.
Well, that's a wrap for today, but there's a lot more coming in the weeks ahead, including Peter Yang, co-founder and managing partner at PokeWorks, Josh Wall, COO at Unleashed Brands, industry veteran and BNI Global CEO, and chairwoman of the IFA, Mary Kennedy Thompson, to name just a few. Until next week, when I am joined by John Tezza, President and CEO of Hand and Stone, I'm Stan Friedman, wishing you the best, the very best of all things franchising, and Franchise Today is out.
Franchise Today is a production of FRM Solutions, providing best-in-class CRM tools to empower relationships with prospective and existing franchisees. Find them online at frmsolutions.com. Join Stan every Wednesday at noon Eastern for another episode of Franchise Today.